Back in 2021, Caden Clark was one of the top U.S. men's national team prospects. Now you fast forward to today, where he's still just 20. Not many are talking about him. Is he still a top prospect? What happened? Can he still bounce back? What happened to Caden Clark? Hi, I'm Johan Filippo, and welcome to Tactical Manager TV, and welcome to an exclusive interview with Caden Clark himself to address everything that has happened to him within the past 2 years. And now, in January, he will look to bounce back and put his career back on track as he joins Minnesota in MLS. So sit back, relax, get some popcorn, drop the like button because I won't be requesting during the video, and let's hear it from Caden Clark himself. What happened? Because there's a lot more to the story than you know. And once again, the kid is just 20 and he can still bounce back in his young career. All right, let's bring in Caden. Okay, everyone, today we have here actually back at the channel for the second or third time, third time, 3 times, Caden.
Yeah.
Did you know that? Interview and the Minnesota one where you were in the
Yeah.
stadium.
Yeah.
How are you doing, by the way? You're in Denmark right now, right?
Yeah. I'm doing good. I came here about a month ago. Finally settled in and yeah, just starting to play now. So I'm looking forward to being here.
Which, since you're talking about starting to play, it's been a bit of a turbulent, I guess, like 24 months in regards to playing. A mix of maybe problems with the coaching staff, maybe injuries that you had, surgeries that you had. Or at least it was one surgery, right? You had appendicitis back in 2021, where you even called in for the U.S. men's national team, senior team, and then that happened. So what I wanted to do in this episode, I wanted to go back all the way to maybe that time, New York. You start off in New York as a top prospect. I mean, you still are a prospect. You're still very young. But with New York, it was a very hot start. You had the appendicitis. And then ever since, there's been struggles, maybe not with catching form, but just seemed like issues. I don't know. You can talk about it. Something about Struber. Sometimes he would put you in terrible situations in the game, play you out wide. Things just weren't working well with the New York Red Bulls. So why don't you talk about that time, and then we go to Leipzig right after. What happened there? Why do you think it didn't go the way it looked like it was going?
Yeah. I think it kind of started after that first full season with New York Red Bulls in the first team. I think, obviously I signed for Leipzig and there was a lot of attention around that at the time, and they announced it right kind of when I got my surgery. And people in the club didn't really agree that was the best timing for it. And some people thought it was kind of a distraction to the team and to myself as well. And they thought it would affect a lot of things, which, is understandable. And that was some people's opinions in that moment. And then, I think, in that same year, it was kind of difficult to come back from that mid-season. And the way Red Bull plays, it's very high intensity and a lot of running. So I think having appendicitis in the middle of that season hurts you a lot because you need to be game fit, for the way we play. And I just think that after that, I didn't really get the opportunities to really get my game back and get fit again, in that season. So I think that's kind of, maybe where it all started in New York. And going into that off season, Leipzig was in a position where they had a lot of players in my position in the midfield, that were doing well, and they were going to stay another year. So we were looking at options, to go overseas or to stay in the Red Bull group in New York and, keep developing. And we ultimately decided that. And again, I don't, there were some talks within the club in New York where, some people wanted me back, some didn't. So I think it was, and when important people don't want you back in the club, but some do, it creates kind of a chaos.
I'm wondering one thing, though, because then you came back to New York for another season, right? And they barely played you, or it would be very inconsistent. So if you're gonna, and this is my perspective at it, if you're gonna ride the bench or just not really play consistently, you might as well stay with Leipzig, right? Leipzig should have just kept you there. It's the level of play is better. I'm assuming the infrastructure might be better, the coaching. So do you I wouldn't say regret because it's not all your decision. It's very easy to look back at it now and say maybe I
Yeah.
should have gone to a loan elsewhere. But in any sense, did you get a sense of being treated unfairly? Did you kind of see it coming when that deal was signed that some people didn't want you there?
Yeah, I don't really want to say I regret anything because I don't, because I've experienced quite a lot in a lot of different in a lot of different situations at a very young age that I think are behind me now. I think are going to set me up to do very well in the next year. And if the situation happens again, I know how to handle it. So I wouldn't say I regret it because again, it's taught me a lot. And I hope that that is in the past now with those situations. But yeah, going into preseason, when one sporting director wants you and the other one in New York, you have multiple. And I think, Leipzig kind of watches over New York and of course Salzburg, and a lot of decisions are made through a lot of people, and so like I said, I don't want to name names, of course, but when a coach doesn't want you back, or like I said, important people don't want you back, but one really important person does, it
Mhm.
creates conflict, and I kind of felt that right away when I went to preseason with them because I went late. I got to New York like with one day and then went to preseason, so I joined pretty late in the window, and I could kind of get a sense of feeling that I wasn't really involved right away. Again, coming late, you can understand that. But in the preseason games, didn't really get many chances. I think I started 1 out of 3 games in preseason and didn't play much in the other one. So at first I was, this is a bit odd, because I just think that I was at the level where I could definitely be an impact player for that team. And, not being in the plans early on really does, affect you as a young player. I think it's not easy. And then, yeah, in the season, I barely get any starts, but I think it kind of started back with, going with the national team is always an honor, but I think we had a lot of national team camps and going in and out of the team in New York, I couldn't really ever get a rhythm with the team. So I think it was very challenging and difficult because I would do very well. Then I would go to camp for 2 weeks, and then I got injured at camp, and I was out for a month in New York, and then I would get healthy again, and then we had qualifiers in the summer. I was gone for a month, and that was just when I was playing really well in New York, and I was about to start a couple games. Then I leave again for a month, and then I come back, and the team's doing okay, and he doesn't want to switch anything, and then I get another injury at U.S. camp again, and then that keeps me out for the rest of the season. So I just think there was a lot of inconsistency. And when you can't get a rhythm with the team, or the coach doesn't want to take that risk and trust you, it makes it, yeah, of course, very difficult.
And Caden, I remember also a while back when we were talking, you talked about how sometimes with New York, I wouldn't say fight, but you had to kind of push it so you could be released for a camp for the national team because you really wanted to be
Yeah,
with the national team. You were at the time one of the captains of the U20s that was qualified or qualifying
yeah,
to the World Cup. That unfortunately didn't go. You were injured with Leipzig. So, do you think that might have created some issues too? Maybe not directly, but again, people don't like that. It's like you're prioritizing the youth national team, but you always wanted to represent the
right.
United States. You've always talked about that.
Yeah, and of course, when you're not playing with your club team, of course you want to go with your national team to get minutes and to get games because that
Mhm,
tournament in the summer was very important. We had like 7 games, I think, and I started 5 of
mhm.
them. So I think, yeah, of course I wanted to be there. And right before I went, yeah, that was one of the moments where it got pretty ugly. I think, like I told you, I was doing very well, and the day before I'm leaving, we play in Charlotte. I got told I was starting in Charlotte, and then he pulled the trigger and was like, "I don't want you to go." Like, and then it created a ruckus with U.S. Soccer, thinking I didn't want to go, and then it was just a mess, honestly. And then I felt like I got put in a position where I have to choose my club team to make people happy, and I was about to start a lot of games, like I told you. I was doing very well, and then I got put in a position where I had to choose between the two. When you get called your national team, you go. I don't think it's really a question. I think
Mhm.
you need to honor that, and that should be an obligation. Um, so I just I got put in a very bad spot, and it created some opinions on me from U.S. Soccer and of course New York, and it wasn't good, obviously. But in the end of the day, I went and had to clear things up with U.S. Soccer because that was not my intention not to go. I think it was I had to choose between a club and U.S. Soccer, and of course both are very important. I think club soccer, you get to the national team because you're doing well in club soccer. So it was not pretty, but yeah,
Well,
it was just confusion all over the place.
yeah, I think when things go wrong, all sides always have some type of blame, whether it is communication. But the sense I got in multiple occasions with the New York Red Bulls was that I think at least Struber, we're going to talk about him, his priority has to be win games with the team.
Of
It's not
course.
really, I need to develop players. I need to win games. And if I can develop young players and give them opportunities, it's the right thing. But you can't also go the route where you completely ignore, neglect the player development of a player that at the time you were 19 or 18, because you're 20 now.
Yeah,
Like
I was
we're
19. Yeah, very young.
yeah, we're talking about this. It seems like you've had a long career, but you're still 20 right now. You turned 21 in 2024. So it's still a very young player that we're talking about here. And usually the coach has to be the guy to provide some confidence. Like just thinking about that's why even when I'm critical of players, I will be critical if you play poorly, if anyone plays poorly. But at the same time, if the guy is 21 or younger, you can understand some things going through their head, and it's going to be a bit complicated, right? Instead of a
Yeah,
27-year-old. And that was definitely turbulent. Then you ended up not going to the U20 World Cup, and that was during the Leipzig time.
yeah,
So you came
yeah,
into Leipzig. Why don't you talk about that experience itself? Because then you are playing among one of the best teams in the world, right? A top Bundesliga side
yeah.
with tremendous players in that team. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, kind of from the beginning, I was going to another club on loan in January and on deadline day actually, and Danny Olmo got injured that last day of the transfer window. So they had a lot of injuries already, and they thought I could be used and get minutes and yeah, get that great experience as well and see what I could do out there. But before I went to Leipzig, there was a lot of family stuff going on and personal things going on as well in my personal life. Which is probably my hardest month. December, January is probably the hardest 2 months, of my young life that I've had.
Mhm.
Um, so I was feeling a lot of different emotions. I thought that going over, of course, when Leipzig comes calling, you can't say no. No one can say no. So, I had to be really tough mentally, but it was the hardest 2 months of my life. And then you got to go over to Europe and be far away from your family and the time change. And, I was living in I wouldn't say hotel, but it was like a corporate living. It wasn't an
Mhm.
apartment for 6 months. So I just never really got settled, I would say. And again, it was very hard mentally. To be there. But when it came to the soccer, I thought I've done really well there. I thought I was focused and got the job done. And I made the bench a couple of times, and being in that same environment with those amazing players. You see what they're all doing now. Shoboslai and Limer and Nkunku was injured, but it's going to be back. But just being around those guys every day and talking to them and hanging out with them and see how they live their life and do the things they do it was really cool, and I've learned a lot from those guys. So. Yeah, it was very tough, but very happy to be able to go there and my game got so much better. Even though I wasn't playing, my game
Mhm.
like excelled at such a high level so quickly as well. Just because you're just around again those amazing players and you want to do well around them, and they make the game so much easier. So it was an unbelievable experience. I had nothing bad to say about it at all.
Now, what's interesting about this is, from what you're saying, is would you say one of the biggest issues with your career so far was to find a home, like an actual club where you can consistently play? I know it was that way early with the Red Bulls, but I think I talked to Eric Palmer Brown about this, center back from the United States men's national team. Now he's in Greece, and he was like in Europe bouncing around in different
Right,
clubs. Some coaches trusted him, some didn't. And he said that wasn't that. He said it was good from an experience standpoint of what he was living, kind of like what you said. But he's like, it's very tough when you're always switching teams, switching coaches. You can never find a place to be, find an apartment. You just mentioned Palmer Brown was living in a hotel the week before I interviewed him, and he said the same thing as you. Was like, you don't have a home, you don't adapt, you don't settle, you don't feel like
right.
you just don't feel at home. But now the whole thing with Leipzig is done. The New York Red Bulls, everything is in the past. And then you are going to go back home, like legitimately
Yeah,
home, because you're from Minnesota
yeah,
and you're going to play for Minnesota in 2024. So you're going to be coming back to MLS close to age 21, which is still fairly young. But before we talk about that, because I want to know your future plans, why don't we talk about this transfer window? Because you had a deal that collapsed with the Rapids. you had offers from Twente in the Eredivisie, but that would have been a loan. Can you go through what happened this summer and how did you end up at Minnesota? Because it seemed like you weren't going to Minnesota at some point, at one point.
Yeah. So, kind of a crazy summer. I think just based off of the last 6 months in my personal life, and again, wasn't playing, and I wanted to find a home. To go back to that real quick, I think just sorry to bring up New York again, but when I was in New York, they always thought I had one foot out the door to Leipzig, so that trust sometimes isn't there. So I think, finding a home now and being I'm gonna be a player at Minnesota United. I can't wait to do that. It's gonna be really good for me. I think I'm gonna flourish in that. But I think having a home is very important. And soccer players are also normal people. Like we want to have an apartment, we want to have a place, to settle down. I think living in a hotel for 6 months isn't ideal. It doesn't make things easier at all. But to the last transfer window, I wanted to return to MLS. I think, like I told you, it was difficult the last 6 months. So I wanted to be back in the States and just play out the rest of the season here and see how I did, and then go again in January, either back to Europe or on a permanent to MLS. So I think that was kind of where my head was at the time. And there was a couple options to go Europe in the summer on loan. But again, I wanted to come back to MLS at some point in these
Caden, you wanted to come back to MLS for more of like personal reasons, family, or was it mainly because even, I guess, consistent minutes for soccer or everything?
No, I think it was a mix of both. I think it was kind of like I needed a mental break, as in like not from soccer, just of like I just wanted to be back stateside. I think and kind of get my stuff together and get playing again and just be happy. I think that was a really important thing for me, and that was kind of my thought process. And see how the rest of the season would go, and then rethink again of how I was doing, and either go back to Europe in January or make a permanent to MLS. I think that was kind of where we were at. Because the club didn't want to buy in the summer, because the summer transfer window is obviously not the biggest one for MLS. Teams don't have money or roster spots, so it's more difficult in the summer. So see how I was doing and then approach it in January. That was kind of the thought process. And then teams came in to get me on loan in Europe with the teams you mentioned, but it was until next May. And again, I didn't want to make that long of a commitment to being in Europe. I knew I wanted to come back to MLS. So that's kind of why those didn't, pan out the way they did. And then there's a couple clubs in MLS. We were very close to getting a deal done. But then it came down to money and roster spots and all that stuff. So then deadline day, the Rapids came in, and it was a loan deal, plus a buy option. And I did sign my side of it, but the time change in Leipzig, they weren't able to get it done, but I'm not mad that happened, because, I was mad in the moment, because that means I had to go back to Europe. But everything happens for a reason. I think patience is key, and that wasn't meant to be, and they're having a hard season, and there's a lot of uncertainty in the club as well. So, it was the best thing for me, I think, for it not to go through. Because then in August I was training with Minnesota. I have a very good relationship with Adrian Heath. So I think he wanted me to train and get fit, so wherever I go, I could, just get a head start. I've just done very well in training and impressed them, and got along with the guys, really well, and I felt a part of the team. And I think, again, I've just done really well in training. So they wanted to do it, and I think it's a perfect time to do it.
So you're going to Minnesota in January on a permanent deal?
Yeah, permanent. Yeah, it's
okay.
2+1, or it's potentially a 4-year deal. So I signed.
Okay, so technically you found home now, because a team now actually owns you. Because even when you were in the New York Red Bulls, you had a deal with Leipzig pretty much set and done. So it was, you were kind of like on a loan already to an affiliate club or team, franchise, whatever. Now you're going to an actual team. You're currently practicing in Denmark with a team right now, just to keep yourself fit, training, and then you're going to go to Minnesota
playing as well. But
playing as well. You're playing as well, kind of like a loan. Okay, so you're staying fit. Okay, so you're in a loan right now in Denmark.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm understanding it better. You're on a loan in Denmark, but then in January, the permanent deal is official with Minnesota. Now, you talked about Europe, how you need almost like I guess, a mental break from Europe. You wanted to come back to MLS, almost reset your career while you're still young, right? You're not going to reset your career when you're 26, when you're
Right.
still young. Do you have the ambition of going back to Europe? Because I think when push comes to shove, at the end of the day, in soccer, the best leagues in the world are still in Europe, right? We talk about the Serie A, the Bundesliga, the Premier League, Liga, whatever we want to call. Sorry if I forgot a few leagues. I just don't feel like mentioning them all. And MLS is like rising, but it's still not at the level of some of those leagues. Would you say right now, even though I know for a fact that Minnesota was probably your number one option, you really wanted to play for
Yeah.
Minnesota because it's
Yeah.
home and because of Adrian Heath, would you say it is an ambition of yours? You still want to go play in Europe at the highest level?
Yeah, I'll be back in Europe, I think, and
You'll be back.
yeah, I'll be back. I think
Okay.
this time around, um, just off experience, like I enjoy Denmark. I think I've been here for 1 month, and I know 1 month is not that long, but again, have an apartment, enjoy the city. People, speak English, so it makes it a bit easier. So maybe it was just a bad experience. I think I was going through a lot in Germany.
Hmm.
Like I said, personal life, and just hard to adapt. I think it was very challenging to adapt over there. But yeah, I think a few seasons at home will only help me, and I think I'll be back in a couple of seasons, or hopefully be a big time player for Minnesota for a long, it could go both ways. I don't think I could be mad at either, if I'm being honest with you. So I think my ambition and goals is to be back in Europe. But again, I just need to focus on the next months here to prepare myself for next season, and come out next season and be a huge player for the team.
And prepare. Well, I mean, you already know about this quite a bit, but prepare yourself for the Minnesota winter.
Yeah,
That's about
that's normal for me. That's not.
Yeah, that definitely ain't normal
That's
for
not.
me. I think the United States men's national team played in Minnesota against, was it Oman or Uzbekistan? We just played a game there, right? Against
Yeah.
Oman or Uzbekistan. And here in Florida, it's literally like 95 degrees right now. Today it's a bit better, but during the time that game was 95. And then I'm watching the game and I see Greg Berhalter wearing like a hoodie. I was like, what is going on in
It's probably a
Minnesota?
bit chilly. Nah, it's probably 50, 60s there right now. It's not
That's
that bad.
cold. That's cold.
Nah, it's nothing. That's nothing.
For Florida, it's cold.
That's nothing.
That's our
Hey,
winter.
I'm back in December, so I'll get the best of it.
Caden, but that's all. I think it was pretty good here to get everyone updated what's going on, because kind of been out of it, kind of like disappear. You were getting into that hype, everyone talking about you, and then so much stuff started to happen, disappeared. Now you're going to be back, and people will hopefully be hearing about you quite a bit in Minnesota.
Yep.
And I'll tell you one thing. I know I said you're okay with staying in Minnesota and having a good career in Minnesota, but I hope you give another shot in Europe
No, I
within the
will.
next like
I'm
2 years, hopefully.
I'm confident. I'm confident I will. Yeah, like I said, I'm excited to get back and get playing in front of my family and hometown club. But I'm confident I'll be back in a couple seasons.
All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. Drop a like before you go. Caden Clark.
Have a good one, guys.